Yes,
We're live.
we are.
All right, folks. So we've got a slightly new, what should we say here? Broadcasting software?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that where we
So
are?
I'm we're using Riverside this time.
Right.
Um, Before we were using our yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you can see the stream because you just posted and you're using the public stream. Okay, making sure people can see it. Um, but Before we've been using Streamyard.
Right.
And that was only because I think you had through Datadog you had an account, but we ended up using my account anyway, which is great. But um
Yeah, I was using Streamyard through most of the pandemic. At one point in
hmm,
time, I had paid for an account for the longest time, and then obviously the company got kind of interested in it as well as we started using it for other events. But I feel like this space was one of those things. Maybe this is selfishly, but I feel like they're addressing a need that was popular during COVID, and maybe less so now, but is a
hmm,
need that I have as a remote person. So I love this, the fact that there's now more than one or two or three apps that can do the broadcasting to live feeds. This is
yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, I mean my issues with StreamYard was that I think I'm paying like $25 a month or something like that, which is not cheap. Um, Especially since I really only use it for this thing, which we do three times a week, 4 times a month.
Three
So
times a week would be awesome.
yeah,
We'll
yeah.
get there.
Uh, and I mean, I stream directly from my ATEM Extreme. I'm now doing it almost every day, um,
Nice.
which is
I
a
did
lot of
notice
fun.
a couple of Olama working streams there when I checked
Yeah.
out the channel. That's awesome.
But with StreamYard, even at that $25 or so, 20-ish dollars, it's only at 720p. And this also is streaming at 720p, but we're gonna have there's other benefits. So it streams at 720p and it stays in 720p. Does all these recordings so you can do stuff later, but you can't really do a whole lot with it. Um, and I was eager to see, well, first off, is there a cheaper approach?
Right.
And so I've signed on to Riverside onto their pro account, which is, I think, also $25 a month if you do it monthly. I'll switch over to a year thing if it works out. Not super sure about that because it's definitely got some weaknesses, like we can't see the chat, the YouTube chat, and we're
Right.
streaming to YouTube and I think Twitter and I think something else. Oh, LinkedIn. But we
Ooh.
can't
Okay.
see those chats. But we couldn't see those chats in StreamYard.
No.
We only see the YouTube one if we're logged into the YouTube stream and we're getting it
Right.
that way. But afterwards, I just did a little play around with it earlier today. But
Hmm.
afterwards, it's got all these like AI features built into the platform. And
Oh, I hear that stuff's pretty popular these days.
apparently AI is a thing. So it will make it easy for us to automatically pull out clips, share them automatically to all the vertical formats, and then also um, yeah, it does a lot of other things. So that looked really cool. Oh, and then editing via text, so you can just like edit the all the pause. It will automatically create an edit for you, and then
Right.
the whole time it's recording mine at 1080p, and it's recording
Hmm.
yours at what did you set yours? Did you set anything?
1080p. Yeah.
Okay, so after the recording, I'll be able to download the full resolution, and then we can edit. And if one of us goes on a monologue for
You can delete it.
a long time, yeah, we could delete it, or we can go full screen on that. Or I can even add, if we talk about a website, maybe I record the website afterwards and add that to it as well.
Oh, that's next level.
So there's a lot of neat things we can do there.
I've ran out of IP addresses on my home network, which is like you've worked in IoT for too long when you're out of IP addresses. Which it's happened to me a few times now in the last 5 years, but
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? So I think I'm okay on my end, but yeah, thank you very much, Sam, for the feedback there.
Yeah.
We'll figure this out.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll see what it's like for well, as I say, we'll test it out a couple times. We'll get better at this. But if it really sucks, I mean, I still have my Streamyard account. Maybe I'll switch to a year thing, or maybe we'll try something else. IPv6, that's your solution. Make everything unreadable.
Sam, you are not wrong. I thought about this many times. Or like DNS names assigned to, IPv6. Yeah, we'll get there. I just have to name every device on my network. That shouldn't be too hard, right?
Yeah, easy.
Oh, they've got host names already. Yeah, it should be fine. But yeah, otherwise, I think this experience is interesting. Also, I noticed on YouTube, what's cool for me is that it highlights the person speaking, which I thought, I don't know, it's a weird benefit.
So I just need to talk over you and just let's not see you. No.
Yeah, it just, I think it highlights both if we're both talking at the same time. Anyway, I got to stop watching this. But yeah, this is super fun.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't have too much to talk about this week. I'm working on this. We've got a yearly conference that I've been working on. And,
okay. When's that?
It's taken up a lot of my time. It's June the 24th. I should know this, like the back of my hand. But yes, it's coming up. It's not too bad. Listen, this year we got prepared way ahead of time, which is excellent. I'm running a workshop. However, I haven't been watching a lot of news and things like that. But I did see like a refrain or something that seems to be a popular theme. It's like there's a lull in generative AI news, and as a result, everybody's saying, "Hey, is the boom over? Are all these companies going bankrupt?" And what I really found interesting is watching these videos and trying to figure out what people's thoughts of this sort of like boom, bust, and echo kind of process is. So if there's something that's popular, let's say Web3 as an example, and it hits a certain level where a lot of people are interested in it, and then I don't know, consumers start getting interested in buying products or what have you. When does it fall off, and what happens after that? What I find interesting is some of the people reporting on this haven't been around long enough to sort of see these sort of trends before, so they don't know what to look for. But the ones that have been have some pretty good points. So, like, one of the questions is, are there a lot of sort of like bull crap companies being created around like this hype cycle and sort of taking consumers' money in maybe a fraudulent fashion and going, maybe I'm thinking of crypto here specifically, but the fly-by-night operations, that kind of stuff. So there's none of that smell yet. There has been some AI washing though, like people calling things like AI, where it's maybe just like machine learning or what have you. But I haven't really seen too much in terms of the over-promising part. There have been some demos that were definitely a little bit hokey that I've seen. Like Google comes to mind. Again, hate to be bashing Google and Microsoft and all the other big companies every week. But there was one demo from Google that wasn't great. But I think on my end, it feels like it's not over. It's very much just... We've almost hit like, is it the trough of disillusionment? Which I think is great, actually. If that's where we are, this means that we're going to get into maturity.
Right.
And I guess all of this seems to have stemmed by one research paper that I saw some people say that came out of Oxford. It looks like that may or may not be true. Maybe it's Oxford, the place, as opposed to the university. But I think the conclusion was that less people are using ChatGPT now than they were, say, a year ago, which... Listen, that could be true. It could be that they were very interested when it first came out, and then they got their, free access, and that was cool, but limited. And then because of that, it hasn't necessarily grown at the same clip, at the same rate that it has been before. But I want to remind people that, like, when you have shareholders and people who are invested in your company, they want your rate of growth to increase, not just your growth to, not just your company to get larger or you to get more clients. They want to see the hockey stick graph. They want to see things really take off like a rocket ship, that kind of stuff. And it feels like it's not that ChatGPT is getting worse or anything like that. We talked last week about the I hate this word, but there's no other word for it, the enshittification of the internet in terms of it going sour after a certain period of time. It doesn't feel like that's happening in this space. It might, but my conclusion is that I think this is like a good thing, that people are or being a little bit more self-aware, or thinking about the industry as a whole is actually a good thing. But I wonder what your take is as somebody who actually honestly does a lot more work in this field than I do.
Well, I think if that were true, things like today's ChatGPT outage, because too many people are trying to reach it,
It'd be a non-event.
it would be. I mean, yeah, but
Or
a
would not.
lot of people seem like, oh my god, it's down. Like whenever GitHub goes down or any other
Right.
Twitter, it's like, oh my god, the world's ending. At the same time, papers come out saying, oh, nobody's using it. Yeah, come on, that's ridiculous.
I think it's ridiculous. And also, if you've got a company that's using this as an API, maybe that isn't surfaced in kind of these reports, you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
And when it's down, maybe this API being down is actually a really big problem because you can't make money any longer.
Yeah, I mean,
What else do
so
you got?
many companies have built their business on access to, rather than a model that they control, a model that is, I mean, I don't know how many times this has happened where it has gone unavailable for a bit of time. I don't know how long this morning's problem lasted, but yeah, I mean, there's this dependency you have that you do not control. I know that was definitely, I mean, for Datadog, I mean, that was definitely a concern for a long time because it was 100% reliant on AWS. And it wasn't
US
until
East 1?
US East 1, yeah. And
I
then
don't
it
want to put too
expanded.
fine a point on it. I don't want to insult all the companies today, but
Yeah,
yes, I've also had issues in US East 1, as I'm
yeah.
sure other people have.
And now it's not just on AWS or even one region. It's on multiple regions,
Right.
multiple hosting providers.
Right.
And that's, yeah, what was that? There was that company that pretty recently Google deleted their whole, it was like some investment firm or no, a retirement fund, like 2
Yes.
billion in assets or
Yes.
multi-billions, and Google deleted
Yes.
their whole account. Not only their one region, but their second region. And luckily they had a
All the
backup
regions.
on another hosting provider or another cloud provider.
This topic, listen, I happen to somehow see a tweet about this just randomly,
Yeah.
and I looked at it like, this seems odd, because the tweet was someone saying, this public message from this company doesn't really add up for me unless there's something really wrong on the Google side. This is before they figured out what was
Oh,
going
right.
on. And I looked at it like, yeah, so they publicly said that there was a problem on the Google end that Google had told them about, basically. And the Google response was, "We're looking into it." And they're like, "Well, they're not gonna like as a financial firm,
Right.
you're not gonna publicly throw shade at your hosting provider unless it's legit, right? Because
Right.
this is an easy way to shoot yourself in the foot." And that's how I found out about it. And I thought, like, yeah, that does seem a little bit odd, actually. And then lo and behold, it looks like somebody, I don't want to say fat finger, but made it like a coding error or
Yeah.
like an operations error where they actually legitimately did delete the data. It
Yeah.
just because there's some, like, I think it was a math operand or something missing, and I greedily grabbed this, which is, you know, there's
Yeah.
humans involved and it's
Humans.
legitimately scary. And my brain immediately went to like, this is something where at least if you had like, if you're thinking about a Raytheon Archie diagram, so like responsible, action, informed or consulted kind of thing,
Uh-huh.
I would at least like to say that you consulted another human, or
Right.
maybe if it has to be a chatbot that you say like, hey, could there be anything wrong with this? Like that to me seems like I hate the term co-pilot. Sorry, I'm full of hate today. But if you had someone sitting beside you
Yeah.
to say like, hey, Matt, maybe
You're a pair
maybe you should
programmer?
think twice.
Pair
Yeah,
DevOps?
maybe. Because in general, I'm sure you're like this too. In general, when I'm deleting something, like
Yeah.
deleting, there's no recourse deleting. I generally will think twice and like just ask someone for a sanity check, because I've certainly deleted data, not to this level, but it made me think about this problem space for sure. Sorry, you got me off on a whole tangent
What was
here,
that? There was
but this
a
story is so interesting to me.
there was an incident like I feel like I was still at Datadog at the time, so it's at least 2.5 years
Night
ago,
Capital?
where the documentation for this company showed an example of how to like drop a database, and the example they showed was their production database, and somebody did it. They just copy pasted, pressed enter without before they had a chance to update and it like took the whole thing down for like a week. I can't remember who that was.
I hate to
I
say
think it was
love
somebody
this, but
important.
yeah, these outage examples are amazing to me,
Yeah.
right? Just like anytime this kind of thing happens, I really think about it. And I don't want to say Gen AI is the answer, but it is an answer
Right.
for sure. If you have to put some sort of training wheels on this kind of thing, it,
Yeah.
it looks like, you know, the Clippy. Did you really want to delete all these tables, Matt? Yeah. It looks like you're about to drop production. Would you like to continue?
Or when a certain company we both may have worked for does bills bill continues to do, or at the time early days of that company did all their billing from Google spreadsheet and accidentally chose the wrong column and billed all customers by like an extra magnitude.
That's got to be before my time.
Oh, it's long before your time. Basically, it was all hands on deck. Everybody got a customer's name and everybody called. So they got calls from developers and like everybody's calling just to be, you're okay. We're not that
Yeah.
bill. You know, we're gonna give you some extra stuff. And
Yeah, you're touching on something that I think is important though,
Yeah.
the make it right aspect of making the mistake. So listen,
Yeah.
I'm not saying make mistakes and then go out there and try to gain trust afterwards because it'll erode trust regardless. But I think that's a good example
Yeah.
of gaining that trust back. And I think in the Google example, at least there's not like from what I saw of their communications, it feels like someone could delete my data again. And I do host with Google, full disclosure. GCP hosts most of my websites.
Okay.
It's just because it's easy. I've been using App Engine for years, but it does make me feel odd about it. Now that being said, Google's a big company, so they've had outages, they've had other things. We talked last week about those search engine results, talking about adding glue to pizza and eating rocks and things like that. I'm not sure if you saw their response, but I thought their response was very mature, actually,
really?
like to the nth degree, and I thought it was really well handled. Really well handled. So one of them was, "Hey, some of these screenshots you're sharing around are legitimately fake," and they called it. I think the eating rock ones specifically is like legitimately fake. Like it's been doctored. It's moved around in this day and age. It's hard to tell what's fake and what's not. We understand this. However, we've confirmed that at least some of these, or the 50% of these, are gone. Also, some of these searches are novel. Like no one's ever searched for this before. How does one eat rocks, for example, is not a search term that's new, and because it's not in the corpus that we've trained on, they didn't say hallucination, but like
Right.
there's no answer there, so there's some liberties taken in the answers given. And then the last was like, hey, mea culpa, like we made mistakes.
Yeah.
Some of these are actually wrong. We didn't think through like the breadth and depth of the searches, and the fact that Google's used by so many people
Right.
so often and on a daily basis. So there are definitely some outliers, but those outliers unfortunately numbered in the thousands maybe. And because of that, it kind of gave them a black eye basically. So they're saying like, hey, one, fake data, unfortunately. Two, I mean, some of these answers maybe were impossible to answer regardless. And then three, it's like, yeah, we kind of messed up, which I thought was awesome. So it wasn't just it was like a multifaceted approach to a problem that's been a little bit complicated, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, you can't really judge a company based on a mistake it makes, because all companies are going to make mistakes, but rather on how do they react to that mistake.
Right.
You know,
And I hate to treat companies as a person, but you're absolutely right. Like the same
And,
applies.
same
to
goes
like
with
you.
people.
For example,
You know,
Matt, you'll make mistakes, but it's like how you recover from the mistake.
How do you recover
you blame
from that
me
mistake?
for it, or like say like you know what I mean. You've gone through engineers that make mistakes, and they're like, oh, like someone was bound to make a mistake. It's not my fault. That kind of stuff. But I think when you reach an engineer that's mature enough, they'll assume responsibility first and try to fix it, which is awesome. And I feel like that's the answer that we got back from Google. Whereas I haven't followed the financial firm too closely, but I would assume that there's something happening between those two companies right now, and then perhaps later we'll get like an answer. But I guess the difference here is that there's like a lot of people's money is at stake versus public search results kind of thing. So I understand that the harm could be worse than the public search results, but it's sort of a newer beta feature. Whereas the one where people are actually losing money, it feels like they're maybe pausing it prior to answering it to make sure that they're doing it properly kind of thing. So yeah, I agreed. It's difficult to judge a whole company based on one mistake, but
Like
I
I
did find that those
remember
two examples are different.
early on in Squarespace history, they
Right.
used to be all of Squarespace was hosted in their data center in their building in New York City. The entire every customer around the world was hosted from New York City and just from their actual offices. And then
Wow.
the big storm hit New York City in a decade ago or so, and
I do
like
remember this.
flooded
Yeah.
everything. All the
Right.
streets were flooded,
When the
which is
subways were flooded, right? Yeah.
right. But that's fine for Squarespace's servers because they're up on the high up, so not a big deal. All the connections between them and the world were perfectly fine, so no problem there. Lose power again, no problem. They've got generators, and they can keep those generators running for weeks, no problem. Unfortunately, their generators in the basement. And or yeah,
Not
I
on
think
the
it was the
roof. Yeah,
generators
getting a Jenny on the roof is hard. It's expensive.
and so they ended up I believe moving a generator from the or getting an extra generator, bringing it up to the server level. But then actually no, it might have been actually a problem with there was some problem with the generators and the floor was like the fifth floor, sixth floor, so, multiple floors, and they had all the gas supply was also down in the basement, and so they spent almost all the night just getting gallon whatever large jugs of gasoline or whatever the fuel is, and running
Hmm.
upstairs, going back down to refill, running back upstairs just to keep the generators running all night. Now, of course, this is because they made a stupid move of having all the servers in one place. I mean, Squarespace wasn't huge like it is now, but it was definitely pretty big. So it's amazing, amazing.
I, I honestly I thought that only Etsy was Etsy was the only company hosting in New York. Sorry, I should know more about New York City, but I do find that pretty interesting. The whole diesel thing. In fact, if there is an Olympic sport, I think it's a biathlon, has to do with some sort of like one of those races, right, where you get to ski
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
shoot and then ski again. So maybe there's one with like diesel buckets or something like that we could do
They
for the
run up
Summer Olympics.
with these buckets of diesel. I put all fuels into one category. Run up the stairs and now try to fat finger or press do a SQL command, and then run back down for more fuel, and then do another SQL
with slippery
command.
fingers. With slippery fingers. We did get a complaint about the audio.
I
So
know.
sorry. I think I'm a little bit lower than you. I'll try to keep the mic close to my face. So peace to the humanity. I think the issue might be that it's my mic technique. Actually, I'll overcome that. And I've got the volume turned down a little bit low because I was using whatever Streamyard to adjust the volume. But yeah, I was
just
using
whisper.
the auto button. You could whisper.
I'll whisper.
We can make this an ASMR podcast.
Ah, yes. But there's also noise in the background. It sounds like.
Yeah, it feels like when you're talking, we're getting like almost protocol. It sounds like MP3s at like 96 kilohertz or whatever. You know that kind of like. So when they're talking about pops and stuff like that, I think that's what they mean. Back in the days
Okay.
of like real media player, it feels.
When
kinda
you
like that
chose the
sometimes.
settings for audio, did you choose the 44.1 or the 48?
Oh, good question. I don't think I picked either.
Okay.
Actually,
I think it defaults to the wrong one.
like
I mean,
CD quality.
the 44.1, I think it defaulted to.
That's 44.1. That sounds about right.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't
let's
care
see, I'm
about
just
noise.
catching up.
Perfect.
Yeah, we got lots of. Now we're ASMR. And then there was another comment about the $20 a month offering, and I think that's kind of where we are, sort of as a, I don't know, as a culture. It's like, what are we spending our subscriptions on these days?
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's more of a meta question. So you were talking about so just to back it up, in my brain, I split these into two sides. There's the content consumption, and then there's the content creation. Now, my content creation budget's pretty big. My content consumption budget's pretty low because my goal is to like produce more than I consume, which is frankly impossible because I watch a lot of YouTube. But I do pay for a few things. I stopped paying for Prime because two of us in the household were paying for it, which didn't make any sense.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So now, which I didn't realize. So if we don't need that, so we do still have Prime Video. I started paying for like the Sportsnet add-on just during the playoffs. You know, you got to watch your team. But I do like I pay for Creative Cloud. We talked about Streamyard. If we end up liking Riverside, I'll probably pay for this as well. But that's kind of where I am when I decide, but it's very difficult because they add up really quickly. $20 doesn't seem like a lot, but 5 of these services is $100, and 5 more is $200, and that quickly eats into your Vancouver rent budget or what have you. Like it's actually non-trivial basically, and a lot of the subs now that used to be, it felt like everything was $10 before. It feels like everything's $20 now, and I don't know if this is inflation or what's going on, or maybe it's more expensive to operate these services, but the $20 a month subscriptions got to be premium for me to sign up, basically.
So, does my audio sound closer to Ryan's?
Much better to me. Yeah, and Sam, that's a good point. Australian does. I'm in Canada, sorry, so maybe that's it as well. Is the Canadian to USD? Yeah, okay. So I can turn mine up. My apologies, folks. We'll do so now.
I was in the happy place up until pretty recently of knowing that all my subscriptions are nobody knows. But then my wife, got back into using. We use You Need a Budget, the YNAB, which does a lot of really good things for making sure you have a budget and you're spending the right amount of stuff. And she went through like, okay, how about this subscription? How about this thing? How about this? What's this AWS charge? What's this other thing? What are these things? And I said, oh yeah, that's Technoevangelist. As like the YouTube, all these stuff that helps YouTube. It's like, you're spending $1,000 a month on subscriptions. Like, no,
there you
that's
go.
not possible.
There you
yes,
go.
you are.
So as a company, can you report a loss at least?
Yeah.
It's the same as my photography, right? Like Creative Cloud is pretty expensive, actually.
Yeah.
It
that's
does
interesting.
add up
I don't. Why do you? Why still at the Adobe subscription? I got rid of it.
Why do I still have it? Yeah. So the 3 apps that I use, and maybe I should say like to use, but Premiere, Photoshop, and Lightroom are the 3 that I use.
Okay. And I just forgot, I do have Adobe subscription just for the Lightroom piece.
Yeah, like the photography bundle.
$10
like
a month or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can't seem to get onto that any longer, and it's $20 in Canada. Again, the $20 number. So it's double the amount in Canada, and it seems like I can't sign up for it any longer, but I'll check again, because I'd like to downgrade at this point in time.
Yeah.
I'm getting used to using Resolve, I think is the thing, is that it took a long time to get away from the muscle memory of Premiere, but I think Resolve is probably where I'll land. So it makes it a little bit easier. But you're right, like I could probably use Darktable and GIMP at this point in time in terms of feature set, having used them recently. Speaking of, like, if I were to live stream, my scintillating content would be like the open source equivalent of, like, I think it's Kden Live is the video editor, which is so at this point in time. But otherwise, I think Darktable, GIMP, and Inkscape are pretty cool. But there's years of experience, right?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much everything I've done that's like Photoshop related in the last year or so has all been Pixelmator.
Interesting.
Because it's like $20, period.
It's done. It's a one-time cost.
One-time cost. Although I do also have, I have a few of the, like, what's the one, the Serif does.
They have so many.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have all 3 of their apps.
All 3?
Photo,
Affinity?
Designer, and Affinity, not Serif. Is Serif is the company?
Serif is the company, yeah. Affinity, Designer, Photo,
Yeah.
and Publisher? I haven't seen Publisher, my apologies.
I have Publisher even though I have no need for Publisher. I don't know why I have it. Like, I love these guys. Bye.
This is how they get you.
Yep.
Yeah. I used to have the same soft spot for Panic, the people who made that portable that you love so much. But I'd want to support them all the time because I really like their software.
I keep it on my desk as example of crap.
Just a reminder of bad product design. So there's stuff around the questions of how many stuff you hide from your wife. So personally, like, listen, I've been married for a long time, so we have the same bank account. So anything that comes through, they will see for sure. I will say, again, take it or leave it, but in a responsible relationship, generally you want to be open about your purchases. That being said, I've certainly purchased things and then asked for forgiveness later. Most of the time, it's like maybe I'm having a beer and it's 2 a.m. kind of thing. And listen, I'm not rip-roaring drunk or anything like that, but the beer gets you excited and you're like, oh yeah, I could use this light, or like this microphone looks nice. And you go from there.
I definitely ask for permission before buying the iPad Pro 13-inch, 1 terabyte nano display, keyboard, and pen, which all comes out to like, $2,800.
Yeah, so there's a question in the chat. So specifically, yes, I think my issue is, we're talking about stuff from Japan. My issue is buying things on auction from Japan late at night. I don't know why. It's like you get in there and you're browsing, and it's particularly Bronica cameras that I grab. There's another question about storage. Another thing that I may grab, like just last minute, is hard drives, which are really expensive, and I'll often like a $500 hard drive, like a 22 terabyte hard drive kind of thing, when you're trying to swap them. But yeah, I'd say in a responsible relationship, generally you want to be forward with your purchases. A little bit easier.
All of my hard drives, all my external hard drives, a bunch of the Samsung. They're all bought for me by Datadog, so I still have those.
We'll send you an invoice.
Apparently, I think at the time, no one in the company was allowed to have external SSDs except for Matt.
That is still the case,
Yeah.
except for Matt. I think, again, when you hit a certain level of company, generally you have like the USB write policy disabled on managed laptops. It's pretty common. I know that Samsung, for example, is the same. It's quite common. And then someone asked about the storage that we're using. So I think I'm a staunch Synology fanatic. I do use Asus and QNAP and ZFS on Ubuntu, or Pop! OS if we're going to put a final point on it. But I think, Matt, are you also in the Synology?
I have a QNAP
fan cape.
I have a
you have a
QNAP
QNAP, okay.
2-drive mini NAS that actually Datadog bought.
Here we go. I'm sensing a theme.
And it's sitting in my sitting somewhere. And I occasionally use that to like offload because my MacBook Pro only has 4 terabytes, so I'm always running a disk space, as one would with 4 terabytes.
Only 4 terabytes.
Only 4. So I occasionally, mostly it's offloading Final Cut projects after I'm done to that.
And is it the full project, like your RAWs, or are they just?
Yeah, it's everything. Well, it's everything. I put it all. So it's, a lot of those projects are 50 to 100 gigs. And so I'll offload all that. But then I also have. You
release, is it 5 a week roughly? 3 week.
It's 1 to 2 to 5 ish.
So you could be up to 4 terabytes a month pretty easily, if I did this right. 2 terabytes a month. My apologies.
Yeah.
2 terabytes a month pretty easily.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, that adds up really quickly.
Yeah.
And I mostly do photos for the audience, and typically even raw, like one session might be 100 gigabytes if I'm really holding on the remote release button or whatever, but generally it's about 60 to 80 gigabytes. So they don't add up that quickly. But
and then I use Backblaze for backups. And
that's kind of where I was going. Storage locally is cheap. Storage in the cloud is not cheap.
I keep meaning to, there was that service that was... you could, we talked about it before.
Spider Oak?
No, some other service that you could back up to any other drive that is also kind of associated, not in your account, but associated. So you could like have a NAS at a friend's house, and it would back up to that. as well as potentially to their service, but then they turn that feature off so that you have to use their service and pay more money.
We've definitely, this has got to be the third or fourth time we talked about this. We always forget the name.
And they're still around. They just don't offer that. But I feel like that's the kind of thing that, I think we both need to buy the same NAS, and like back up each other's data to this thing that we can't touch.
Yes. In fact, the studio that I shoot in, my best friend runs it and has a Synology there and at home. And that's kind of the discussion that we're in now. So I'm going to, you can't see it because they're blurry, but that's a stack of hard drives that are, they're SMR hard drives. They're not bad drives, but generally anything over like a RAID 0 or RAID 1, they're not great drives when you have to rebuild, but that is our plan now, is to figure out some way to have pockets of data in multiple places, because I pay $80 to Google for storage alone, let alone like the Google One subscription. We were talking about iCloud, Apple Music. Someone mentioned Usenet. I may have paid for Usenet at one point in time, no longer. Backblaze, and then there's the Patreon subscriptions or what have you. I got to be honest, I don't have any. I used to support artists, but even my local Hackspace I stopped paying because I was really trying to cut down during the pandemic on all of the subscriptions, and I think I got it pretty low, and then. It's like the levy broke or something, but they seem to start be adding up again.
I'm up to $40 a month that people are paying me on Patreon.
There you go. On Patreon?
On Patreon.
Right. Maybe I'll support you. I don't know. I'll pay you to be a guest on this. But I think the Patreon model for me is very interesting, honestly. Just as because I feel like I can actually support an artist and have a real meaningful impact on not their ability to create. It's more like the want to create. So Matt, if you get more subscribers, you're thinking that like, hey, these people are interested and invested in my success, and as a result, I want to produce for them, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like awesome. I owe them now. I mean, even though there's no
it might just be $1 a month.
Yeah. I was like, I mean, somebody gave. I mean, it's one thing to watch have 1,000 people watch an ad and I get the 10 cents from that, but for somebody to give me $1 or $5 or one person with $20 up every month, I was like, thank you so much. I'm so excited. I need to work 10 hours just for you, even though it's like $1. And so it's totally.
Gotcha. It seems I'm still low, so I'll turn it up a little bit more. My apologies, folks. I'm trying to talk directly into the mic, but I think it's still pretty low down there.
Yeah.
So I will try to fix it next week.
One of the Patreons that I support is, I use Final Cut, and there's this one YouTuber called Final Cut Bro, and I support his
name.
I support his channel. I think it must be like he created that channel when he was 16 and he's stuck with it.
That's so common.
But he puts out plugins that are, you only get the plugins if you are a patron, or the, certain examples of using the plugin, or how did he build it, or, all these other things, or just a huge discount on buying the plugin. And I mean, and he's great. So, and I guess
that's a good point.
For some reason, I'm still supporting the bloke. I really should stop that. But
the bloke?
The bloke does a lot of model conversions.
Right. And why would you want to stop? Have they done something that's not great?
I don't really.
Yeah.
I mean, I was expensing it, and now I can't really, because I don't work for a company I can expense it.
There is some talk in the chat, but it looks like the Patreon model seems to be pretty popular.
Yeah.
Is it Jack Dorsey? Is that the guy's name? Maybe I've gotten it wrong. I can't remember the founder's name.
Is that the the Digital Spaghetti YouTube channel?
Multiple now,
multiple channels. Yeah.
But I guess what I also find interesting is this person is a creator. I guess is what I'm trying to the point I'm trying to get to, and I think as a result, because they're interested in this type of interaction or this market, that they are still continuing to create and talk to creators about this, which I think is phenomenal, just in terms of like community building, or maybe it's goodwill or whatever. But they talk the talk, they walk the walk. It's awesome, and it feels abnormal. We're streaming to YouTube now, and I know YouTube had founders and then got purchased by Google, but we don't really hear about that too much. We talked about streaming to Twitter or X before, LinkedIn, that kind of thing. These are different types of platforms that feel like, again, I'm trying not to be mean today, but it feels like they take more than they give a lot of the time. And then when you leave the platform, the question of what you own and what you don't own, or like that revenue stream and how that works is different, where it feels like Patreon, you kind of own your success. Maybe that's a bit rich, actually, but it feels like you're more involved in that content. And it's not like somebody that has your content. Yeah. It's not like it's stuck on Patreon kind of thing and you can't take it elsewhere. I really like that model, basically, and I'd love to see more of this as we're talking about new social networks. Threads is out there. I finally did find that Instagram button, by the way. I wasn't able to get to generate anything, but it does say search with AI after I updated last week. Again, maybe it doesn't generate in Canada. I'm not sure. It will, though, take multiple pictures when I upload and ask me if I want to create a reel, which I think it uses Gen AI to find the music for the reel. Right. So again, this might be a little bit different in different markets, but in terms of like how Gen AI proliferates these apps and makes them better, not there yet. I'm still stuck on this topic we were talking about before, basically. I don't think we've hit a wall. I think we've hit like the trough of disillusionment where people are like, this is helpful, but not as helpful as I thought it was going to be, which makes me think that it's going to get better as a result. So that's kind of waiting for that next climb.
Some people have commented on some of my videos where I've looked at different front ends for Olama, and it's like, well, can't there be just like one really good one? It's like, well, it's still kind of early. It's still like everything's exciting still, and there hasn't been enough time for a company to get behind building a product that is polished and supported, that has all the features that everybody wants now. It just doesn't. There are lots of projects that are getting close, and some of those projects are becoming companies or getting funding, and so that's great. But they're still all pretty rough. I mean, Datadog as a solution, I mean, it's really a lot of pieces in there, but it was a long time before it was more than just collecting metrics. More than the original vision for Datadog being Facebook for metrics. It was like that for the first 2 years I was there, and Datadog had existed for 2 or 3 years before I started. So it takes a long time for all those features to get added to make a nice cohesive product.
Yeah, in fact, honestly, like I work for a company, but also as a user of the software, I've used it for years. I feel like there are promises that Datadog has not made, but are trying to get to in terms of like a platform that you can build apps on, that kind of thing. So there's been a few times where we've released SDKs and products and stuff like that, and the traction just isn't there. Maybe it's just like a bad fit or whatever. And there have been a couple times where we've re-released like an app builder kind of platform. I think, we're kind of in that space now, but it's interesting to see, how do I say this? Like what your clients say they want and what they really want might be different as well, which is difficult. So sometimes you have to be opinionated, which is, I think, the early days of the company. Whereas now it's a little bit different in that you're trying to satisfy a lot of people too. I don't know. I don't have a lot of big opinions here, but
that classic. I don't know if it's a real quote, but the quote we always hear from Ford, from Henry Ford: if he listened to his customers, we'd have a faster horse-drawn buggy.
Right. What's my favorite? Like, you can buy a car in any color as long as it's black, kind of thing. Is the other one, which is I think an example of opinionated kind of steering a company, basically. Not to put too much of a pun on it. Yeah. So listen, this week I decided to wear a different shirt. I'm not sure if you noticed, but I figured I would point it out. So I'm wearing a Mets shirt, which is a Canadian band, which I also wanted to point out. But I finally used Merch Bar. Have you ever used this? When you go into Spotify and they say, "Hey, there's merch available for your band, Matt." Oh yeah. And I look at it, I'm like, "Oh, you suckers, you got me. I do like this T-shirt, but as much as I love Spotify, I don't want to buy a shirt through their ads to stuff. And maybe I just should. But maybe like I listen to Apple Music, I listen to Spotify, I listen to music that I've legitimately purchased as well. But I really like music. I followed a few of the links. They landed on Merch Bar, so I figured I might as well just go straight to the stores instead of through Spotify. Chances are it's a cookie and they'll get some sort of kickback anyway. But I went. So again, there's a conference coming up. I've lost a little bit of weight. I'm not sure if I mentioned this to the channel, but I've been on an allergy reduction diet for 3 months, which means that I can't eat a lot of stuff, including like wheat and yeast and sugar, which is unfortunate because that's like most of my diet. Yeah. So in 3 days that will be over. But I'm now a medium, which meant that I had to buy new T-shirts. And I was like, what better time to buy 5 T-shirts for a conference I'm going to? Then now. So I bought 5 punk band black T-shirts, and it was phenomenal. Got here in about 10 days, which is pretty good for Canada. The cost per shirt was about $20, which is pretty good for Canada. And the whole experience was actually not bad. Like, I can't say I'm the biggest fan of Merch Bar in terms of the way the site works. I don't know if you've ever used it, but it's difficult to find like black T-shirts for a genre of music, which took me a bit to get there. But I was able to navigate around and get to it.
Can you stand up so I can see the full picture?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay. So all I could see was like the top of his forehead. And so I was thinking that this was Jaws coming up out of the sea, because that's all I could see. I couldn't see anything
eating
more.
The forehead.
Yes, eating. I couldn't even see that it was a human head.
I actually don't even know what the photo is about. Okay. I think it's a messed up Polaroid that's been digitally altered to include flames inside of it, is what they're trying to say. Okay. Who knows? The album's really good. If you like hard, like driving rock, you may like it. I also bought 2 pins and a CD from Mets at the same time. Again, maybe it's because they're Canadian. I figured I'd throw those some cash. But I put the actual physical CD in my car, in the actual physical CD player, and that felt good. I'm not gonna lie.
I do not have one.
To take a disc out and put it in. There's no disc player in your car.
No.
Yeah. That feels weird to me, but again, maybe I'm just older. But like the physicality of opening a CD sleeve, seeing the picture in the insert, and then
pulling it out of your 10 CD sleeve on your visor,
the visor, Classic. I used to drive around with one of those 200 CD holders and make my partner go through them and pop them in and stuff like that. Or in the iPod era to rate the songs that we liked as we went through. But yeah, we're back to CDs now.
I mean, I at home I had, it was pretty fancy to have one of the CD players that could take 5 CDs on a big tray.
I'm jealous. Yeah. So you could play like all of the Pink Floyd albums that you like.
Yes. Sitting. Maybe a little Journey in there as well, and all the top hits of the time.
I love it. Yeah, I never did get the multi-disc changer, and I really do.
How much have you lost? What, you went to can you say the?
Yeah, I think I haven't measured the weight, but I'm down 3 pant sizes, maybe 4 pant sizes.
Wow.
Yeah, so I went from like a 38 to a 32.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like pretty marked difference. And the question I have is like, how big was my butt before? Because the gut's kind of the same, but like, I mean, in terms of pants and the way they fit, I'm pretty sure there's only one other factor here that I don't necessarily look at. Is this maintainable,
or are you coming back to that larger size?
I generally don't gain. I generally just sort of remain the same way for a while, unless it's gradually increasing or decreasing. Yeah. It's more about being active. I think now that it's sunnier out, I say this kind of like it's getting sunny today. I hope the Pacific Northwest gets some. But yeah, it's sustainable. The main thing is it looks like I had an allergic reaction to some yeast that built up in my stomach and made me allergic to like every food, which was not good. So word of warning, I think it's called Candida infection in the gut. Many people have it. Sometimes they just go out of control, and that seems to be what happened.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's very, very odd. I had to get blood tests. It was quite strange.
Have you noticed that it's colder? Do you feel colder?
Yeah, all the time. You're talking about like caloric intake and stuff?
No,
yes,
I'm talking about just losing some fat. One thing that my experience
good point. Yeah, that could be it too.
The
insulation is gone.
yeah, exactly. When I was at Microsoft, I did a program called 2020. And they pair you up with a dietitian and personal trainer and all these other things. Microsoft totally covers it if you're an employee and you stay in the program. And I went from about 290 pounds down to about 220 pounds in
Wow.
about 3 or 4 months. And I kept most of that off up until, it took it like 15, 20 years to get back to,
Right. It's
yeah,
like most of us, honestly, we're pretty. We tend to
yeah,
sit in a chair and work kind of thing.
yeah,
And I don't eat a lot. I've been around you. You don't eat massive meals. I mean, for your size, you don't eat
yeah,
like massive meals. It's kind of normal.
yeah,
So I think it feels like most of the people in the industry are like that. If we're
yeah,
gaining weight, it's slowly over time
slowly,
kind of
yeah,
stuff, and it builds up. Yeah.
yeah.
And this is not to say
Or,
anyone
as
in
I
the
like
chat
to
that you
say,
need to. Yeah.
stored knowledge. It's stored
Yes.
knowledge. I'm smarter.
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, I think a lot about the ship of Theseus. Have I ever brought this up on this
No.
podcast? Okay, so ship of Theseus is the question: if you make a boat that's made out of wood and you put it out to sea, many of those boards will go rotten over time, and you'll have to keep swapping them out. And that at some point in time, you will replace the last board. So the mast or something might break, and you replace it. And then the question is that the same boat as the one that you put out to sea in the beginning? And I think it's around 40, maybe 45, where like all the cells that you had when you started off as a human have changed. And you're laughing about the stored knowledge, but like it could be that like different cells have migrated around
Uh-huh.
your body.
Uh-huh.
They generally will have the same role, but yeah, it's maybe you're digesting the brain cells and they land
Right.
in the belly or something like that. But I do like, yeah. So are you a different person? Are you continuously evolving? It's very interesting to me.
Well,
Again, no answers here, just food for
yeah.
thought.
But after all that weight loss, I felt cold. I had to wear jackets more often.
Right. Like right now I'm cold and I
Yeah.
feel like I could have a jacket. Yeah. Prepping for hibernation is a pretty good one. I like that. Yeah. So yeah, so my checkout for the week is Merch Bar. If you've got bands
Okay.
that need love, they will get some proceeds of the t-shirt purchase or what have you. The other one is Bandcamp. When we're talking about like things to
Okay.
buy, that's where I get most of my music is Bandcamp. So it feels like now that we're kind of out of the COVID lull in terms of performances, even though listen, COVID's still out there, having just gotten it recently. It is a nice way to give back to those artists that may have been suffering for the past 2 or 3 years.
I'm looking around. See if I-
Uh-oh. You
I mean,
definitely prepped for
I'm
this
I'm very
episode, I can
excited.
tell.
I'm very excited because my iPad if I look at Apple Store now,
It's still not here? I had assumed it was here. Sorry. I
your
don't mean to yell into
order
the
your
mic, but
order is being prepared for shipment. It's been
all
there
right.
for 2 days. It's been at that
Wow.
status.
I
Preparing
wonder
to
if
ship.
you're one of those like custom pre-built kind of things where they've like legitimately only
So
made a few of these and it's come to you.
Well, on the initial day, I was trying to figure out how can I delay this iPad from showing up, because if it showed up, it was gonna when I first started to place the order, it was gonna show
Right,
up on
I-
Wednesday or whatever.
Right.
But I was in Sitka or Ketchikan or somewhere far
Right.
far away, and in fact the closest Apple store to where I was in Alaska was down here in Bellevue. So there was no. Well, I
It's
guess
another boat ride
there was
back.
a Vancouver one, but I wasn't going there, or Victoria. But
Or Juneau?
huh? Yeah.
Juneau? No?
So no, there's not one there. So
Nothing in the Northwest Territories.
no,
Okay.
way north. No.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
There might be one in Anchorage, or somewhere like that. So I needed to. Yay!
There goes your video frame rate. It dropped to like 2 frames a second. That was awesome.
So I had to get it delayed by a little bit, and so I thought, well, let me add an engraving, because that's got to be
Yes.
delaying things.
It's like by a week.
But
yeah.
didn't change. It was still going to be delivered that same day. It's like, but I think I kept that in the order, and eventually, kept like retrying, refreshing, and eventually it moved back to 2 weeks later, and so that's where I am. But I maybe should have removed the engraving, and it might have been here a little earlier. I don't know. Or not.
It's a tough call. I like the engraving because then I know,
Yeah.
like especially
Because
for
I'm
the
sure
AirPods,
there's
like, I
a
know which one
human
is
being
which.
with a little
like the stone tablet and the.
Oh, this is totally my internet. My internet sucks.
Yeah, it's I think someone said dodgy internet.
Yeah.
It does look like dodgy internet to me,
Yeah.
especially because it's audio and video and the way
Yeah.
that it's fluctuating. Yeah, it happens. Happens to us all.
Yeah.
Someone went from 120 to 66 kg, and that's a lot. And I meant to say a disclaimer, like, listen, this doesn't mean that you need to go out and lose weight to feel better. This is just something as a result of my allergy thing. But yes, that is a massive change for sure. Luckily, I kept some of the old genes around just in case. You know, when I first joined Datadog, I was like, I'll come back to this weight.
Whoa,
Just
that
slightly
is
out of
huge.
style. What's that?
66 or from 120. I have to
Yes.
do the math. 120.
That's a whole person.
That is a whole person.
Yes.
264 to wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, so Sam, you're right. So the main thing I was avoiding was throwing up every day, and that has stopped, which is fantastic. Concurrent features. Oh, we've got one. Oh, do you have time for a
Oh
tech
my
question?
god,
We
is
have
that a
one.
relevant question?
Oof.
Where'd that person come from? I know.
NVIDIA L4s. We gotta look this up. What's an NVIDIA L4?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's a tensor core. Oh, interesting. Oh, it's a DC tensor core. Oh, we're learning. Very interesting. All right. So I think, yeah, so it's Google Cloud, right? So they may have early access on Google Cloud based on what I just read. Trying to run on NVIDIA 4. Oh, okay, so the question is like basically multiplexing. So if they want to use 4 GPUs at the same time with Olama, is there a way to get around it? Concurrent features. And I think this has come up a few times.
Wait, they want to use multiple llama. No.
Yeah.
No.
And I
So
think
there
what it
is
came down
a-
to was it Docker was kind of the easiest
Docker
way if you mask.
Is potentially, if you can, as a big if. There's also some NVIDIA command that says, use this one GPU for the next command. I think it is, but I've seen people try, because it's mentioned in some pretty esoteric NVIDIA support article ages ago, and I
Those
don't
are
know
always
if
the
it
best.
really works and I don't have an NVIDIA card, so I can't really try it myself. I mean, it will. I don't know of a way to say for this Olama serve instance only use this GPU. It's going to use all of the GPUs, and
Right.
which is going to be slower than using one GPU.
Yeah, I mean the traditional answer is you could isolate them in VMs, but if
Yeah.
you're on the cloud, based on the article that I just read, that's going to be a little bit more difficult to do. In blacklisting with Docker can help, but yeah, it can be difficult if the OS already has the GPU crab, but you can kind of do that way with PCIe.
I mean, if you're going to be in the cloud, is that where are we assuming that?
I'm assuming just based on the L4 article
L4.
that I came across.
I mean, if there's a cloud
which allows
instance,
you early access in Google Cloud.
Oh, cloud. I mean, I've seen the L4s also on Brev, but Brev is just reselling.
Oh, okay.
Google Cloud. I mean, it is Google
gotcha.
Cloud.
And
But
then
with
there's like Paperless or something as well. Anyway,
Paperspace.
sorry. Thank you.
Paperless is the paper cover on your iPad.
we saturated all the words.
But Paperspace, does that. So if it is a cloud provider, then we'll just get an instance with one of those L4s, and then another one with an L4, and then another one. I mean,
and Sam's basically saying what I was thinking is that setting the CUDA device.
CUDA device, yeah.
It's a bit of a pain. I didn't know about Llama CPP having a distributed backend, which sounds pretty handy, actually.
yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
I think, the Olama team is very careful about not just rolling out all the changes that Llama CPP has. Because there's maybe other engines coming to it and don't want to be just lockstep into. But that was what I thought 6 months ago. Maybe that's not going to, I don't know if that's going to happen.
Tough call.
Yeah. Wow, all these Olama questions last minute.
RPC backend. Wow. Blast from the past. That's pretty cool. Between macOS, Linux, NVIDIA, AMD. Very, very interesting. The plot thickens.
Huh.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool, actually.
Okay. I know the Intel Arc support apparently is some basic support for Intel Arc is built into Llama today, and
Oh,
and they're testing it out.
I somehow
And
missed that on the GitHub stuff.
yeah, I
Awesome.
don't think it's mentioned anywhere.
Ah, gotcha. That's really cool because Battle Mage, well, they've been saying it's about to be released for a while, but the 700 series, so the top of the line kind of Intel card seems to
I
be
think it's only
pending.
been tested on like the smallest of the Intel Arc cards.
Uh,
But
Honestly, that's maybe even better because it's hard to get those tiny
mm,
video cards. It's hard to get a small video card, and I think Intel's kind
mm,
of the only vendor that can give you one that's tiny.
yeah.
Interesting. I like that a lot, actually.
So I don't know if that's going to support like the integrated GPUs.
Right.
Yeah, all I know, I don't even know what Arc really is. I just heard that term, Intel Arc.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head there when you were talking about the integrated CPU stuff, because my understanding is that they're different cores
Mm.
that are like it's sort of like ASIC made for graphics
Hmm.
stuff, but the difference between the on die and the discrete is that there's more of the cores. Is my understanding is that's the architecture. So it went from their old integrated graphics into this,
Hmm.
which is it's surprisingly performant actually.
Hmm.
Just because I guess if you're coming from if you assume that this is a brand new thing, you'd think it would take them years
Right.
to get to this performance level. But surprisingly, it seems to be priced okay. Yeah, it actually looks okay.
This
Oh no,
NP,
we've opened up
the
we've opened up the
NPU
floodgates here.
question, uh, is something changed regarding,
It's
is there like
branding,
news
yeah,
of NPU? Is that just like in the last few
yeah.
days?
In the last 3 weeks, I'd say 3 4 weeks, and it's Nvidia specifically renaming a bunch of their mobile processors and releasing the 7000 series, and yeah, the they call it the third generation third generation NPUs, but it's basically it's onboard graphics plus plus
Mhm.
because again they're adding extensions to it to make things a little bit easier. But that is my understanding is that the
So
NPUs are just a
I'd
different
never
term for
heard
what they're
that
using
term
before.
up until like 2 days ago, and I've seen like six questions about that, and I
We
have
talked about
no
this, like
answers. Oh, is
the
that
Coral, right?
Carl?
Yeah,
Okay.
so the core you could call that an NPU or a
Okay.
DPU, depending on who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my understanding is that all of these are NPUs now.
Hmm.
Similar to like, are we in the era of math coprocessors? Like that's what it feels like to me, right?
Oh
Again,
yeah.
I'm pretty old, but I've seen like so GPU was a
Right.
coprocessor, and now we're into the NPU coprocessor. So that's kind of where
I I
we're spitting
bought.
out these.
I remember buying the math coprocessor. I don't know why. I mean, I bought one when they were a thing. Yeah.
You must have been doing a lot of math.
Not intentionally.
Yeah,
Well, I
not
must have
by
been like,
choice.
I think at the time I was really into POV Ray, early ray tracer.
Pavre,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
And that
just
might have
making awesome
benefited.
tea kettles. I remember was
Yeah.
the first project. I don't think I got it further than the tea
Yeah.
kettle. It took
Yeah.
so long to render that freaking thing.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've covered most of the chat. I think so.
Yeah. I think so.
Perfect.
So any other thing that I've recommendations? I feel like there been any TV? I don't think there has been. Um, I just saw. I For some reason I was sitting down. I was like, I just feel like vegging out for a little bit, maybe
Yeah.
an hour, half hour, no more, and I ended up sitting through the movie, the whole movie, which I hadn't seen in a long time. Although I used a clip of it in one of my videos pretty recently,
Ooh,
"Enemy of the State." Do you remember that?
I do. Is it Denzel Washington? Is
No,
that
it's
right?
Will Smith.
Oh my god, I'm so terrible. I'm so sorry.
And
I do remember this movie. Yes.
where he's a lawyer, but his like a former friend, college friend, drops a some sort of game gear or something into his bag with a PCMCI card that has the secret information that has a recording of some senator being offed by the FBI or by NSA, and everybody's out to get him, destroy his
I
life.
feel like I've never watched this movie, honestly. I thought I had. Now that I'm looking at the cover, yes.
It's not bad.
It's got
I mean,
Gene Hackman and John
yes.
Voight. I mean,
Yeah,
Will Smith's all right. Like, honestly,
it's pretty
he's
cool.
all right. Yeah.
In fact, thinking of
It's Jerry Bruckheimer. Yeah, how are the action
like
scenes?
totally over the top. It's pretty fun, and of course that reminded me of other movies that involve technology that were actually pretty good from way back. Like
Swordfish as like the
I don't know if
cringiest
Swordfish
scenes.
counts as one.
That's the opposite, I think.
I mean, like there was also what was it, The Net with Sandra Bullock? It was terrible.
Yeah, the computer scenes are probably okay.
Mozart's
though.
Ghost or whatever was the game. Oh,
Yeah.
that was. I mean, that was. I remember.
Oh, I think we actually lost him. So this is where we go into the monologue and we see if we can cut this after. There he is. He's back. I think you lost internet.
I think.
This is where we can test the AI.
That's right.
Figure out if we can drop the scene.
That's weird. Everything went dark.
Oh, like all the lights turned off?
And then it came back.
Oh, okay.
My UPS started.
Right. Oh, maybe you lost power.
Although a lot of this should stay out. It must have been just like the whole island.
A brownout?
The whole island lost power yesterday.
Ah, okay. So maybe they're resuming or something like that. Yeah. All right. Oh, well, listen, we can call it here. We'll figure out what this conclusion looks like. But so everybody go watch Enemy of the State and recommend any movies that have somewhat accurate hacker scenes or technology
Sneakers
scenes in them.
Great.
Sneakers was amazing.
And Hackers, actually, with Angelina Jolie and a very young Angelina Jolie and some other folks.
Recently watched that for the first time. I hacked the planet. I loved it. All right, folks. We'll see you later. This was awesome. Yep. We'll see if we can find the end stream button.
Yeah, it's a new place.
It's a new interface.